Hello everyone, very welcome to the second edition of our Up to Speed interview series with prominent thought leaders from across the automotive sector and beyond. Today I'm very pleased to be joined by Harald Seidel, who is the CEO of DAF Trucks, and he was also recently elected chairperson of ACEA's Commercial Vehicle Board, which gathers the CEOs of Europe's leading truck and bus manufacturers. So Harald, welcome.
Thank you.
We are delighted to have you with us today at this very critical juncture for the European truck and bus manufacturers. And maybe to just start with a rather general question. Why are trucks and buses so essential for our daily lives?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would say that trucks transport around about 80% of all the goods in the European Union. And buses account for the majority of the public transport of people. So if I make the comparison, trucks and buses are what blood is in our veins. They transport the things that's needed, like in the body to keep the body going, and in society to keep society going. Think about a truck providing the goods to stores, providing the medicine to the hospitals, providing everything that's needed to factories and to offices, making sure that constructions are done. That would be not possible without having trucks. So trucks and mobility is really key to keep our society going.
Now, what makes then the commercial vehicle industry different from the passenger car industry?
Yeah, trucks and commercial vehicles are really different. A passenger car is a passenger car. A truck and a bus, dependent on the application, there are so many different ways of using a truck. A long-haul truck is completely different than garbage collection. So the amount of applications is really different. I think what's the second important difference is that you buy a passenger car with your heart because you like it. You buy a truck with a calculator because you need to earn money with it, because it serves a purpose. It needs a job to be done. And the job is to have that vehicle on the road. And that's the third one. A truck is driving. A truck can drive up to 250,000 kilometers a year. And being on the road, keep driving, that's the most important thing. So any hour not driven is an hour lost.
Yeah, so business case is really
there
very
is
crucial.
a business case, and there needs to be a business case when you buy a truck. That's very important.
And why should policymakers care about this difference?
Well, like I said, a truck is meant to drive, and any hour lost, if you transport flowers from Holland to Italy, any hour lost in traffic is an hour lost to make money, but also to get the goods on the destination. If I drive on my vacation with my passenger car and need to charge my electric car, I'm okay to wait for an hour for a charger, make a little detour, drink a cup of coffee. For a truck with flowers driving to Italy, first of all, the business case will be disastrous if the truck needs to stop for a couple of hours to charge. But secondly, there's perishable goods in that truck. So policymakers need to care because trucks are really different in their needs than what cars are.
Yeah, and regulation can be a driver and builds the framework also for a thriving business. And that's why they need to consider the specificities of this industry so much.
Yeah, absolutely. We already talked about trucks need to have a business case. So if you want to drive policies, you cannot only focus on the supply side. You can try to regulate the supply side and saying, hey, the trucks need to be this, that, or the other. But in the end, the transport company who buys that truck needs to have a viable business case to drive that truck.
Now, you've been recently elected as chairperson of ACEA's Commercial Vehicles Board. What kind of vision do you have for your mandate?
Well, I think the challenges in automotive are currently enormous. If you take a look at especially the Green Deal, the amount of transformation that's coming towards the automotive industry is really big. Also in digitalization, all the data legislation that's coming towards the industry is also enormous. At the other hand, automotive is a key industry in Europe. 30 million people working in it, 7% of our GDP. Keeping the automotive industry in Europe not only sustainable but also competitive, having a good industrial strategy, a good industrial policy. Thinking about this year, with the new European elections upcoming, the changeover towards a new commission, for us as an industry, as a transport industry, it's so important to have consistency in regulations. Consistency, not piling up law after law, but making sure that's a really consistent framework that we can work with.
Talking about law, only very recently, ambitious CO2 reduction targets for trucks and buses were put into law. So what is needed to achieve these really very ambitious targets that have been set?
I'd say that the targets that have been set by the European Commission on decarbonization of the transport sector are the most ambitious in the whole world. And the truck industry is committed to decarbonize. But as I already said before, trucks is a business-to-business environment. You cannot just achieve something by only regulating the supply side. There needs to be a viable business case for transport operators. Translating into what's needed, we call that the enabling conditions. We need be as ambitious on the enabling conditions as we are on the targets that we set on the OEMs.
And what are those then, these enabling conditions?
Well, if I'm a transport company and I want to drive a truck, what I need is to know that the coming 5-10 years I can earn money with that truck, and I know wherever I can charge it or refuel it, it's possible, regardless of whether I drive to Italy or to Poland or to Spain with that particular truck. So enabling conditions is about making sure that the infrastructure is there, that the recharging can be done because the truck needs to drive. It's also making sure that enough green energy is there, because we need the solar power and the wind power, the green energy, to be able to charge the trucks. Otherwise we don't decarbonize. That's one side of it. The other side of it is there should be a good viable business case for the transport operators. Currently, it's more expensive to drive a zero-emission truck than driving a diesel truck. And if we want to really convince the transport operators to go for zero emission, we need to change that by incentives and by really stimulating the transport operators to take on that zero emission truck. Those are the enabling conditions.
I always hear you and your colleagues say that vehicles are not the bottleneck. It's really indeed about getting these enabling conditions in place, especially now with the 2030 and 2040 deadlines. Europe really must do much more to decarbonize heavy-duty transport, whether that's charging networks, carbon pricing schemes, purchase incentives, and so much more. I would say that's a very good point to leave it with our viewers today to reflect on. So I'd like to thank you for spending the time with us in this second edition of Up to Speed. And I'd like to thank you for being with us. And I'd like to encourage you to check out our future-driven manifesto on the website, where you find much more on how to keep Europe's vehicle industry competitive while also tackling our shared goal of combating climate change. Thank you.
ACEA, driving mobility for Europe.